All right, welcome to the Metamodern Hackers Collective. James Weir is here, is going to present on WeCo.
Right, so we've moved across all the old content that was on the discourse forum, and you can find that, navigating down here into metamodernism. We've got a little Metamodern space, and then within that we've got the Metamodern forum. And a lot of it is kind of similar, I guess. There's quite a lot of overlap to how the old discourse forum worked. You can create posts, you can have comment threads below those posts, you can like posts. You create a new post by clicking here and this button here, and then you can select from different types of media that you want to use. We also include some kind of more experimental post types that Laurence has influenced, like the glass bead game, and then the string and the weave, which are based on the glass bead game, which is a kind of a collaborative conversation or media-based game. And then you can filter content with a bunch of different filter settings. And then we've also been developing these lenses, which is like different ways of visualizing the same content. So you've got the kind of the standard social media list, but we've also got a map view, which then represents all the posts as nodes, and they're then sized in proportion to the filter settings. So at the moment they're sized by date. You could size it by likes, and then that will reorganize it. It's still in development. There's a lot more that we can do with this. There's also the ability to create links between posts, which is something we want to lean more into. There isn't any examples of that here, but they get represented in this kind of graph view. So you can actually, any post that you go onto, you can see links to other relevant content that other users have linked. And we're hoping to add in the ability to sort of up, down vote links as well. So you don't just have a load of links and don't know how relevant they are, but they can actually be ranked according to user-based input. So that's kind of like the sort of the basics of the design. The last sort of few weeks, I've been doing a lot of updates to this space map. One of the issues we'd had was that because like this D3 approach to visualizing a hierarchy is really designed for a strict hierarchy, but WeCo's framework is holonic, and so you can actually have spaces that exist in multiple locations at once, and that was causing some bugs. So I've done a bit of work on that, and like here's an example. So you've got the Hansi Freinacht space is existing over here and over here. 6 forms of politics is in 3 different locations. So we've kind of now got it highlighting the other points, so you can see that they're all referencing the same space. And then something new that I've actually been working on is this circle packing view. So this would be like another lens, another way of exploring through the spaces. So we're in all at the moment. So this is all the different spaces on the platform. And then you can sort of zoom in and you can find, move around, explore different areas. And I feel like this is like, the nice thing about this view is you can fit a lot more in than you can with the tree view. If I go back to this mode and go up to all, you're kind of restricted in how much you can actually fit on the page at once. And you can see here, there's like 106 extra spaces, and you could keep expanding that out, but then it becomes a little bit overwhelming. Whereas as this view feels a little bit more natural, it's a bit easier to kind of get a sense of where things are and sort of zoom into different areas. Then you can click on a space and it will take you into that zone. And then you've got the parent space above, so you can navigate back up. So that's kind of like the stuff that we're working with at the moment. I mean, the way that I would frame what we're doing here is we're really trying to just create a test bed for experimentation. So I think me, and I imagine a lot of you guys, feel that like there's a lot of potential for us to evolve social media beyond where it's at the moment. The platforms that we're using right now have a lot of limitations built into them, whether it's talking about the company structure and the kind of the incentives around that, to produce profit versus what's actually good and healthy for users, or whether we're talking about like how you actually harness the collective intelligence of a large community. I believe that there's a lot of ways that we can evolve social media so that it can do these jobs a lot better and serve society better. And we're kind of seeing this as one of many experiments. There's a bunch of other great projects out there, like Hilo is doing some amazing work. Vincent, who I saw was on the call earlier, is doing some awesome stuff with Catalyst. Sam's doing some awesome stuff with 4B. So there's a lot of these different experiments going on there. And we're just hoping that this can be a kind of a test bed to experiment with ideas. So if anyone has any thoughts on like cool features that they would like to experiment with, or ideas for moderation or decision-making tools, we love to kind of hear those ideas and do what we can to incorporate those into our workflow.
All right, thanks, James. And yeah, I think we could probably have a few minutes to go through some questions, some suggestions for WeCo. There also might be integration points between WeCo and other projects people are working on here. And it looks like Kåre can go first there.
Thank you. So I'm currently, as part of the NGO Sociocracy for All, where we work with sociocracy, we're reviewing some IT platforms that try and solve some organizational challenges. So I see that you've written governance there. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so it's not fleshed out yet. That's kind of like a placeholder where at the moment we've got some basic polling tools on the platform. So we have a post type that's called an inquiry, and then you can have single choice voting, multiple choice voting, and weighted choice. But that's all we've got in terms of decision making at the moment. But the idea is that the governance organelle would be like a location that's embedded within every space where there could be kind of community polls based around a variety of different things that the community might be navigating. There would also be information about who's moderating the space, potentially different roles that could be allocated to different users within that space. And then we've got, I won't get into it now, but there's a whole bunch of other decision-making tools that are more complex than just a single poll, like decision trees and other things that we would like to integrate there as well. And then kind of slightly related to that, we're just starting to step into the Web3 space. So we've been in communication with the Cosmos network and are working on connecting it up with DAOs. So each space could basically have a DAO associated with it. And then that could be used for economic purposes. So you could pool funding there, and then that could be redistributed out to child spaces or to users, based on, different things, depending on what you're trying to incentivize. But it could also be used to do stuff like on-chain voting on decisions, electing moderators, that kind of stuff. So we haven't done much there yet, but it's kind of like a space that we're really interested in pursuing further.
I would recommend that you take a look at Nestor.io. I would generally recommend to look into the Socratic methods to avoid the democratic trap, with that selects for narcissism. Is, I think, the way Tyson Younger Porter phrased it. I can definitely be helpful if you like to, but Nestor.io seems like it's the best platform at this point, and they're very open. It's Thomas Thomason, who is from Holacracy One, if you know that company. They're very good and very open. I think they'll be helpful. But there are a lot of deliberate democratic methods also, of course, and it's very good to use those. Is this a replacement totally of also like the Metamodern forum, not just the Discord channel, but the forum that Emil and Daniel made before?
So as far as I understand the old forum, I don't know the details of how it was being hosted, but whoever was doing that has taken down that hosting.
Okay.
So what we did was we basically took a database dump from that old database and migrated that over to Wico. So as far as I'm aware, that's the only kind of version of it at the moment. But we've still got that database dump. So, you know, if another platform wanted to experiment with migrating that data across, there could be other instances of it in the future.
Got it. I'll write the name for the platform I mentioned.
Yeah, they took down the old Metamodern forum because it was full of bugs, but James here was able to scrape the data and recreate it pretty nicely. So you could just go in, I guess you claim your profile that was there before, you know, there's a link to do that. And then, you know, you have control over, I guess, the old posts, and you can create new ones. I'm not exactly sure if there's certain features that aren't 100%, you know, seamless as before, but for the most part, it's pretty much there. So all the history of what you were doing, and you can add, you know, new posts and stuff. So it's pretty awesome work. And my question is interesting. Okay, so talking to a few people, including George Poor, about the use of AI technology to, you know, kind of like analyze the reams of data that we have, or just conversations. Like, for example, you got Jim's got podcasts, transcripts. So George's idea was that somehow something could go in and tag concepts and the relations to podcast episodes and hosts across multiple podcast platforms, and then, you know, create that sort of visualization tree. So I could go into Wico and I could say, you know, tell me about consciousness, and it would tell you, it would show you, you know, who on what podcast episode was talking about that and what they were saying, and then the different connections, relations to different subtopics or related topics. And I guess there might be some sort of way to do that using AI technology. And I don't know, I think there's a lot of different pieces of the puzzle. And as last I heard, George is working on one piece and trying to get some grant funding for it. And last I talked to you, James, you were saying, you know, that, or I think it was Laurence who said that, yeah, we don't really have the resources to work on all the different components of that, but it would be kind of cool if we did. Jim, did you want to speak?
Yeah, the things I've been fooling with the last month are exactly that. You know, how to use AI to enhance our knowledge representations. I just put a link in the chat. Stephen Reed, nice young fella in England, created this from the rough and ready transcripts on YouTube of my podcast. And if you click on it, you'll see it produces a knowledge graph by topic. And then each topic has a nice little mini essay. And the mini essays were written by GPT-3. He has also done this for Nate Hagens and for Daniel Schmachtenberger and Nora Bateson, and I think one or two other people, Jamie Wheel. And it's a little slow, but it wow, he adds more. Jordan Greenhall. So this is certainly an approach that works. And I talked to the guy, and he's no super techie, but he's good enough at using tools. And I particularly like the way he used some, you know, very simple natural language programming techniques to find the categories. And then the big time saver was using GPT-3 to write the mini essays. He created a template, very, very clever work. And he's able to knock these things off very, very rapidly. And he's looking for projects. So check him out at stephenreed.net. If anyone wants to be introduced to him, I'm happy to do so. My other little project was I created a chat bot for my podcast. I did this one myself. And very ugly, very, very beta, but it works. You know, if you click on it, you'll see it, you know, it's a text box, enter anything you want to ask about content in the podcast or anything else for that matter, and it will attempt to take a stab at it. The way it works is we loaded up the transcripts again. This time, the dirty YouTube transcripts into a tool called Llama-Index, and use that as a side database. You can then query that side database using some high-end natural language programming techniques called latent semantic space, where your query is projected into the latent semantic space of your content. So you don't have to use the same words as long as it's conceptually similar, and the magic of latent semantics actually works for you. It finds the closest chunks of text. It then packages up a template. This is the clever part. Builds a template from the text from the transcripts, and then sends that to GPT-3 to turn into smooth output. Very simple. And this concept of using the context space in GPTs as a input device for other forms of automation is a huge idea. And my mind is just going like this on things that can be done with this. And I'm sure I'll be knocking off a few things. I think I'm going to write a movie script writer, for instance, that uses this technique where the human, creates various pieces, and you press the button and it goes back and forth with ChatGPT and bootstraps itself up and then generates a whole movie script. Definitely doable. How good it'll be, I don't know, but it's definitely doable. So, I'm really, really excited by the capacities if people understand them correctly. One of the things you got to watch out for is these large language models confabulate and hallucinate. For instance, if you ask my chat bot, what were the 10 most influential or similar thing episodes in the podcast, it'll knock out a list of 10. They all sound very compelling, and they're people who are plausible guests on the podcast. But I think 5 out of 10 or maybe 6 out of 10 are completely made up. They did not happen. And this is the kind of thing that these large language models do. It's the nature of the beast. They don't have any logic. They don't have any grounded knowledge. They're nothing but essentially statistical compilation of that allows it to do a text continuation from one text to another. So you got to be really careful when you use these things. On the other hand, they're amazing. You type in things like what does Jim think is the meaning of life or something? It'll actually give you something fairly good. Or ask it about game B, and it'll mostly give you some good stuff with a little bit of confabulation thrown in. And so I think there's 2 parts here. One is, how do we use the tools to enhance things? Like Stephen Reed's is a good example. I think that would be really interesting to add to Wico, for instance. And then these chatbots. But then at the same time, we have to make sure we invest in educating our users that this stuff is not definitive, and to take whatever it tells you with a grain of salt. And you see this in the press all the time. People going, "Oh my God, it did that." I go, well, of course, that's what you'd expect it to do. That's what these things are. These are not intelligences. These are feed-forward neural nets that are essentially statistical compilations of tendencies in language, and no more than that. So anyway, so that's what I've been up to. But like I say, I'm super excited. I mean, this reminds me of PCs in 1980, right? When there were so many things you could do with PCs that hadn't been done before that were valuable. You could get little software packages out in the market in a week, right? Or 2 weeks. I think you're going to see, people who hop on these technologies and learn how to use them appropriately are going to find that. The other thing that's interesting, again, it's kind of like PCs in 1980. A lot of the stuff's real easy, right? Because it's picking the very low-hanging fruit. It's just stuff that's never been done before. Because a tool like this to particularly produce output language has never existed in this kind of form before. So anyway, if you captured my enthusiasm, it's definitely there.
All right.
I should add, if anyone needs a quick intro to how to do this stuff, hit me up and I can, tell you the tricks. Oh, the other one, frankly, where I got 3/4 of the things that I've been doing. I did a podcast recently with a guy named Dan Shipper, who is a writer who writes a blog. It's behind a paywall, but it's a very good blog on practical uses of AI technology, focused on easy, simple stuff. and he writes very well. So check him out, Dan Schipper.
Yeah, hopefully something like, you having the right social network design and feature set and the integration with AI would allow us to maintain our supremacy over the AI. So if things are designed properly, something like Wico and other tools, with Catalyst, Hilo, etc., we would remain as humans, or some of us anyways, maintain our sovereignty, which otherwise I think there might be a little bit of a tendency for us to further offload or outsource our mental capacities to these tools that seem they're only kind of superficially intelligent, I think, as Jim was alluding to. In certain ways they're more intelligent than we could ever be, but in certain ways they're just really not. They only seem like it. So at this point, I'm not sure who would like to go first. There aren't that many of us, so maybe we could give us some space for everybody to talk about what they're up to, and we could open up to a needs offer protocol as well. I know I've been working with some of you guys on certain things. All right, Sam, go ahead and take.
I apologize for the background noise. I'm in the Mauritius airport, so waiting for a flight back to Amsterdam. Just really an update. I don't really have any needs or offers. I mean, I'm always willing to contribute in whatever way I can, but just an update on 4B, just kind of rounding out the new designs. Got a lot of feedback from users, basically telling me that it was way too complicated and ugly. So that was the first round with me as the designer, so no surprise there. And I have this one of the top rated designers on Upwork that was within my budget. Joined me actually as a co-founder and taking partial equity for her work. So that's great. And so she's kicking my ass and simplifying things and taking out killing all my holy cows and all that kind of stuff. So that's good news. And very exciting. So that, also, I don't know if any of you heard of Flowback. So it's a Swedish liquid democracy group, and we've partnered. Actually, we're kind of in the sort of the little feel out phase. I've sent my main developer to basically volunteer and work with them for the next couple of months while the designs are being finalized, and help them out in whatever way he can. But the concept is that Flowback is intended to be Linux, and I'm intending to be Apple. So, and so I want to have Flowback as the foundation, which means that we have to change, our backend was in Node, we have to change it to Python. And also they're using PostgreSQL as their database, and I was using Mongo, which was a terrible choice, by the way. And so we were going to switch to MySQL, but Postgres is a little better and they're already using it. And so we're going to try to support each other whatever we can. So that's kind of good news. Hopefully it'll work out. I have quite a different feature base. We'll just have to use our new front end and just sort of graft it onto the back end. So we're going to have to get some changes to their back end made to support our front end, support our process. But there's enough overlap that I think it should be too bad. So that's where we're at. And I just want to sort of this little itch that's in my little burn my saddle that has to do with and kind of starting to create. There isn't a tool for it would work for it if it was up, but it's not. But it started sort of open the doors to the discussion of how we sort of brainwash ourselves in society. Like if we could brainwash ourselves optimally, how would we do it? What would be like our sort of narrative, politics of narrative, how would we like to talk about, all of the problems and challenges and opportunities that we face in our society. So that's a little burn myself. I don't know why I'm throwing it out there, but it is metamodern, and that is something that I'm really excited about, and I'm hoping that 4B will be able to kind of facilitate that a little bit as a choice making and proposal sort of platform, sense making platform. So anyway, at some point that might be a fun thing to do with the Metamodern Hackers, kind of get your input on that, since you've all read the book and you kind of know what it means, and maybe you might be able to think about changes that we would need to make to be able to kind of make that thing, make that a real thing. So that's good. That's me. I'm going to sign off. I'll keep listening, of course, but thanks for doing what y'all do, and until next time or till later.
All right, thanks, Sam. You were kind of breaking up for a second there, but I think I got most of what you're saying there. And I can have a little commentary on kind of how I see a lot of things coming together, because what I'm trying to do is figure out, like, how can we coordinate to implement something close to the 6 new forms of politics of the second Hansi Freinack book, the so-called Montesquieu 2.0 model, that would have a separation of concerns across these different areas of life that we're trying to promote. That there's like a structure to how these are oriented. There's a master pattern, so to speak, that is aligned with the different kinds of epistemics. And the way it's there in the books is that, these different organizations would align with one of those. But then you could branch into the others. You just, like, any organizations, raison d'etre, would be anchored into one of those 6. And it sounds, Sam, like you're anchored into democratization. Now, you can then, I suppose, branch into other areas like the politics of theory, the so-called the narratives. I don't like using the word brainwash. I understand that that's sincere irony, but it's also, I mean, it's a little weird to me that you're saying we're brainwashing each other. We are looking at, though, unifying narrative that gives us meaning and gives us intelligibility in life, and that's important. And there are some organizations that are centrally based on that, such as the new initiative by Ellie Hain and Joe Edelman, the Meaning Society, actually, what's it called? Rebuilding Meaning, yeah. And then they're anchored into that primarily, and then they're branching into democratization, I guess, down the line at some point. And I talked to Daniel and Emil about some of this, and in my interpretation, my expansive interpretation of how to implement this using civil society, as we're kind of trying to do here, that I think still is in keeping with the master pattern, because these different branches are supposed to operate in relation to each other, just as long as probably the recommendation is that there isn't any one organization that thinks they can be all things to all people and have more than one main anchor point. Like, we are simultaneously being the main, really, really important democratization and meaning-making spirituality to people. So you're probably primarily anchored into one of those, and then you can branch into other branches from there, if that makes sense.
It absolutely does, and I think you're absolutely correct that I'm rooted in democratization politics, and I see the easy, low-hanging fruit, and the thing that sparks my interest and seems fun to me is the domain of the politics of narrative, politics of theory. So yeah, you're quite correct there.
Yeah, and also my own, I guess this applies to me as well, even though I'm trying to get meta on the whole thing and try to figure out how can we implement this. My own interest primarily is the sense-making side, to being able to sort out fact from fiction in the news, and also the inner development and inner awareness. I guess those are the 2 branches of government that I'm mostly interested in. And I guess even more primarily than anything is the sense making, the so-called existential, I'm sorry, no, the empirical politics is that's my main thing. So, but anyways, let me go to Bernhard here.
Thanks, Brandon. I wanted to react to Sam. First of all, congrats on getting a designer co-founder. Lovely to hear, because I really like the idea of 4B. And I'm excited to see where that will go, and see also a lot of overlap between what James showed and where 4B is going, also what Kåre mentioned. And from what you said about your technology choices, if you need any assistance with choosing a tech stack or something, I can offer my help, because I've been doing exactly that for many years. So if you need assistance with that, hit me up. Yeah.
Definitely. I'm not sure where I'll grab your email, but I'll look for it for sure. And I just
Or you
want to
can
say that
look-
James and I,
Sure.
James and I have regular meetings. We're kind of trying to support each other in what we're doing. So there's some overlap and you know, and some real variance. And so yeah, we're definitely interested in similar things and trying to support each other to do whatever to bring those things into fruit.
Lovely. Yeah, we can also connect on the Discord, so that we have a central go-to place to connect. And then secondly, Brandon, you opened the floor for sharing what we're up to. What feels most meaningful for me to mention right now is I've been taking a very critical stance on how all the tech stuff we are doing is disconnected from basically the local world where we're living, right? And I've taken the recent criticism of Dave Snowden as a starting point to look a little bit critical at the Metamodern works as well. Also, I've learned that he's going to be appearing on Jim Rutt's show, which I'm very excited to learn about what that discussion entailed. And I wanted to check out actually the SenseMaker stack that the Cynefin uses, and specifically into the direction of governance. It's interesting to me if anyone has worked with that or has any opinions on that. That would be interesting. Other than that, no real needs, no real offers at that time, aside from what's already happened so far and what's already happening. Lovely to see you all, and thanks again, Brandon, for organizing this.
Well, I'm not sure. It sounded like you asked a question there a second ago, Bernhard. I wasn't quite getting it. I think you were asking a question about the Cynefin framework and whether people have used it.
Not the Cynefin framework, but the SenseMaker stack, which is supposed to help organizations go to the next best thing, as opposed to have a grand plan to deal better with organizational complexity. And the unique thing, as I've understood it, is that it does both the empirics political view, if you want to frame it like that, but it also captures the uniquely individual narratives associated with data points. So I'm just very interested if anyone has used it, has any experience with it.
I have not actually. I was interested though in comparing the some of these different frameworks that seem to stand in adjacency somehow to the hypothetical deductive method of science, where everything kind of works through like, oh, this is science, and then there's everything else is, you know, not necessarily given the same or any really level of you know, authority in knowledge creation and also the construction of mutual understanding. So there's some of these frameworks such as Theory U, such as Cynefin, that somehow I think incorporate, you know, phenomenology or hermeneutics or other systems theory. And I think there are some people who are working on some of this. I got recruited into a project that is comparing meta theories, and I'm really interested in the epistemological side of this sort of a thing. You know, and in the coming months and years, we might really look at that. And it looks like some more people came onto the call here. I'm not sure if Laurence, Johan, or Turquoise, if any of you guys would like to you know, maybe talk about what you've been up to, and you know, we can also, if you have any needs or offers.
Ahoy.
Hello, Laurence. So yeah, before you joined, Laurence, James here was already showing us the new WeCo features and how it replaces the former Metamodern forum.
Cool. Yeah, we've been plugging away on that. And something which I've been feeling very inspired by recently is this idea of the global brain. And it seems to me to be a very fertile metaphor to employ as an attractor of how we manifest the global brain. And I've been intertwining it with these ideas of play and trying to imagine it as the global brain as a games console for a massively multiplayer game of coordination that would maximize as much as play as possible for as many different people all throughout the world. And yeah, I've been reading about the various theories about it and some of the algorithms that people have been creating about how to actually manifest it. And I'm interested in starting some kind of a working group or a playing group to further explore these ideas and play around with them. So if there's anybody who's interested in that, then get in touch and let's jam. And Turquoise, you asked, I'm doing OK Drive. I imagine you mean Play Drive. And yes, I'm doing Play Drive in Austria from June 5th till June 12th. We'll be doing we'll be trying to play this idea into existence of what it is, the global brain and the global brain. How do we play with the global brain as it manifests itself with time? And so we're going to bring together play theorists and game designers and coders of various sorts, and yeah, just do a lot of designing and jamming at this beautiful place called the Crypto Commons Hub in Austria, in the mountains. Yeah, so you're all warmly invited to that.
And there's two of you guys there who I've been working with on couple different projects. So Johan, if you'd like to speak here.
Yeah, I could say something what I've been doing lately. I'm writing a meta theory chapter where I'm producing a kind of new way of looking at cognition. So what I'm exactly right now doing that is kind of tied to this group that you might help me is what kind of new cognition things exist outside, like I come out recently or in like the shifts that has happened in cognition, because I need to kind of place what I'm doing within what has happened before in cognition, and especially if it's technology related models and non-related. So if somebody knows something about that, that would be very interesting to me.
I'm not entirely following what you're asking, but I know that you and I are both in that new Arch-Disciplinary Research Center, and I think that what you're doing is a little bit in association to that. And
yeah. Okay, let me put it like this. Let's say you want to compare two meta theories. Then you need to have a good model of human cognition, because any kind of meta theory basically is way of showing how your current configuration of your cognition, how it's like configured, how you kind of cut reality. So it's kind of like gives some kind of insight how your brain is structured in a sense. So, and I suppose modern artificial intelligence artificial intelligence models would be quite close to some kind, would be interesting to see what's happening in those spaces. But I don't know anything. Haven't followed artificial intelligence for a long time, so I don't know what kind of cognition models exist right now. But I suspect they should be very interesting to refer to. And probably it's a good time to start looking into AI at this point.
I would say that the mainstream of AI right now is not focused on cognition models. Rather, they're focusing on how much they can squeeze out of the deep learning, deep neural net architectures, which are not cognitive in any normal sense.
Sure.
And there is, around the edges, people now saying, hey, this has gone too far and we need to start moving back towards more cognitive type architectures. Some of the older ones that were around, there's a very interesting project called OpenCog by Ben Goertzel. Another one, these are in pseudo AI space. There was, anyway, I'll give you a list. If you email me, I'll send you a list of some of the
Nice.
older cognitive frameworks. The work of Gary Marcus is much worth looking into in the AI space. He's a person resisting the over concentration to deep learning. Let's see, but I would say that some of the most interesting work right now is actually being done in the cognitive science and cognitive neuroscience space. Anil Seth just put out a new book, I think last year. I had him on my podcast recently. He's a neuroscience guy, and he has some quite interesting theories of cognition and consciousness and sentience, etc., that's worth looking at. So I would suggest triangulate between and among cognitive science, cognitive neuroscience, and AI to make sense of what's on offer out there.
Yeah. What do you think about John Vervaeke's work in cognition? You muted yourself.
I unmuted myself. There we go. Okay. John Vervaeke, is that?
Yeah.
It's certainly an interesting cognitive model, but it's a pretty high level cognitive model. It's a long way from something you could actually implement. Yeah. I think it's more useful for understanding oneself at kind of the sort of quasi, personal development level than it would be for something you could actually implement. Be my take on it. I've, of course, talked to Vervaeke quite a lot. He's been on my podcast, I think, 6 times, and I think his stuff's very interesting, but not obvious to me how it is it's not really a deep cognitive model so much as it is a human perspective on how we do our thinking, but at a very high level, basically. That's how I would distinguish it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking about this as well, where Vervaeke's model of relevance realization takes into account your like evolutionary trajectory or like your the values for you essentially have some just core values that are almost kind of baked into your existence based on your evolutionary history and how you use energy to survive. And looking at the Consilience paper from last year about how the technology is not value neutral. So essentially, unless these people are being cognizant who create these things of what are the values, what are we trying to do, there ends up inevitably being a value created in for whatever technology that whatever they're creating. So they're pretending like there is no inherent value. Oh, it's a tool to use whatever you want to do with it. But kind of behind the scenes is they have their values that end up finding their way into the technology tools to enhance their own power somehow. So this is something I was asking just a few days ago, one of the developers of ChatGPT, and I said, what is the overall purpose? What is the reason for this? And he didn't really exactly have an answer. So looking at the relevance realization model, it's whatever it ends up being, whatever the developers find relevant in their lives ends up finding its way into the technology tools that they're developing, if that makes any sense. So I mean, that's an ethical consideration. And there's also unintended consequences in society and culture that they're not looking at as well.
That's of course a huge question, because it's not their job in game A to look at other consequences. Their job is to look at, is it personally fulfilling and does it make money for my employer, or at least have some potential to do so. And so that is of course a master question. How can and should broader society be engaged in the omni consideration of these kinds of things? Today, there is no such, right? That's not what the system does. It just does what it does, driven by personal interest and money on money return, and we get what we get. And it's worked for 300 years, but it's getting to a point where it might not work successfully going forward.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. I think it was a little hard for me to say it, but like, what is the purpose of ChatGPT? Oh, it is to make money for the people who designed it, and for them to say otherwise, or to say, well, it could be used for whatever you want it to do. That's essentially bullshit.
Well, yes and no, right? Think about Steve Jobs' theory about the Macintosh. It was a bicycle for the mind. I think one could make a reasonable argument that ChatGPT, GPTX are bicycles for the mind that help people put into words things that they wouldn't otherwise be as fluid in putting into words. So I think in that sense, there is a final cause type purpose in these things, right? They're not. The reason people think they can make money from them is because they serve some use value in the world. If there wasn't a use value, nobody would, or at least a perceived use value, nobody would go to the trouble of investing in it, billions of dollars now in OpenAI, for instance, and creating this stuff. So I would say, don't lose track of the fact that there are use values to these things. The question is, from an omni-considerate perspective, are the benefits of the use values actually benefits, and what about the unanticipated side effects? And there's no mechanism today for that to be considered. When Microsoft decides to invest $15 billion into OpenAI.
What would a mechanism, an omni-considerate mechanism for deciding how the world, basically how its reuse sources look like? I mean, it's such a tough question. I go to the store and I see this like industrial waste, basically like garbage just on the shelves. And I think that somebody should have said, no, that's not how we use the resources. You know, like what would that be? You know, is that a democratization thing as well? Is there some kind of committee or you know, liquid democratic, you know, group that kind of votes on any new item that gets created or puts considerations on it, or like what would that ideal system look like? I would love to brainstorm on that.
I would say certainly Daniel Schmachtenberger probably most famously has talked about the need, but also very famously has never said a word about how it might be implemented. And then the other thing I would worry about is that Marxism probably sounded like a good idea to some people at the time, and that didn't work out so well. And so who has power to say what about what is always a key consideration in designing a social operating system. And if you're going to give somebody the ability to veto technical innovation or some process, you better be damn confident that it's not subject to capture, which most things are, and that it doesn't have unanticipated negative side effects. So I would say big question, how to do it, not known.
That's exactly it. And it's the same set of problems that we deal with anytime we're dealing with collaborative decision making in general. I don't know, I'm trying to, it's what I'm trying to tackle with this ridiculous project that I'm doing, but and I think it could be used in similar ways, but yeah, we'll see.
Turquoise, did you want to share here? I'm not sure. Did you have anything?
Sorry, I'm bugging people in the chat and clicking on all the links, saving them. Apologies. What do I want to share? I don't know that I have anything to share. I'd love to check out the cognitive models list, Jim. I emailed you. And if anybody is interested in giving any feedback on AI white paper that is soon to be released, let me know. It's about AI alignment and like economic alignment and incentives. Yeah, we'll love to share that. Let me see if there's anything else.
Well, what's going on with the Collaborative Tech Alliance?
What is going on with the Collaborative Tech Alliance? It's in the middle of a collaborathon. I think there's actually a meeting maybe right now or pretty soon here. Proposals are in synthesis. Yeah, and it looks like there's at least going to be hopefully one group with a synthesized proposal around something like a pro-social design lab that integrates deepening of trust and relationality across the groups. And then what's being built is kind of out of my purview right now because I'm not in those pods. But Tibet should know. I believe there's a social media or a technology nutrition label, single sign-on. Yeah, a couple things like that. I also posted a link to the Technology and Social Cohesion Conference that I just got back from yesterday. And there's a list of organizations and some speakers and some technologies that may be interesting to look at, and some research that came out. I think Remesh and Colin McGill's work at Polis was quite interesting, and Common Ground's work and around peace building. So it's interesting to see the intersection between, or at least for me, it was interesting to see the intersection between peace building and kind of the UN and some of these large scale democracy projects or decision making and voting. Yeah, if there's any questions there, I can share maybe later on a call what I saw there and what I learned and who's kind of in the field of social cohesion. It was the first conference of its kind, bringing people from around the world who are working in social cohesion. Some Stanford people, some Harvard people, some MIT people were definitely there, and a good bit of institutional nonprofit style people. So, yep. I think that's all I have right now. Yeah. Oh, another thing, AI and consciousness and wisdom tech, if anybody's interested in that and maybe has some coding chops. I'm looking at Python and maybe some machine learning chops. I'm in need for a project this year, a small research project that is looking at the intersection of the climate change and the values action gap. So collecting data in surveys and automating that process, mapping where those people are located in terms of their perspective taking, complexity of thought, complexity of language, and meaning making. So there's a small tech project that I'm leading and supporting that could use some help there on the technical end, on cleaning up some of the code base. If anybody's interested in a gig or help, or just help volunteering and helping out, would love to chat.
Sounds like quite a bit. You started out saying, I don't have much going on except at everything. All right. So I think we're just about at an hour. I'm not sure how many people, some people might be dropping off soon. It looks like Vincent already dropped off and Kåre as well. And does anybody else have any interesting things to share here?
Let's make a note that I just posted a link to a good survey article about computer cognitive architectures that goes and reviews the whole history of it over 40 years. It basically lists all the ones that I've ever heard of, plus a bunch that I haven't. So it'd be a great place to start for someone who's interested in looking at the history of what's been done in this field. I got to go, guys. Bye-bye. See you next time.
Bye. Thank you.
And I might just stay on for a second here. I'm not sure if anybody else is dropping off, but one thing I'm interested in, and actually I was talking about it earlier, is about how to implement the 6 new forms of politics of the Montesquieu 2.0 model. And what I am also, there's a use case that is pretty important, I think, that I don't hear that many other people talk about, which is to bring people together regularly in person to cover these areas of public life, democratization. So that's where we're going to promote civic engagement. We're going to bring people together into these circles in hopefully major cities, and or at least that's a good starting point. Then maybe you could get into smaller cities as well. So democratization, inner awareness. So these are like meditation, mindfulness, circling, authentic relating groups. This is already happening in a lot of cities, but to do it more, to coordinate that, and also sense-making groups. For 10 years, I've been doing politics and philosophy, cafe discussions, salons, so have those. And also art and culture events, which to me could be seen to align with the so-called Gemeinschaft politics. So you're doing book clubs, film clubs, other kinds of hiking groups or whatever, just any kind of thing that brings people together, and you have a certain kind of trust building and communication without really having an end game in mind. We're not saying like, oh, we're going to get together and we're going to talk about this specific like current events or philosophical topic. We're just going to get together. We're going to build this sort of trust here, and have fellowship. Then there's also the meaning making spirituality kind of groups, and then the I guess for the so-called so those align with those new forms of politics. There's also one for liberation and I wasn't sure how that would align with anything other than like kind of protest marches, so that's interesting. Bring people together for that to have sovereignty over powerful forces that could be imposing or taking your liberty, and that could be against corporations or government agencies or whatever, just to have that sort of connection with people, bring people together to have that force. And does that round out the 6? Something like that. Anyway, so the idea is that you would have those happening regularly in major cities that are in person, and then those would somehow be woven together with the ones that are happening online and connecting people across geography. And then also that there would be a way of floating between these groups that are aligned with these different so-called forms of politics, so that there would be interconnections between them. So people would be able to have ways of promoting those different aspects of life, so primarily also my focus is on adult lifelong learning. It's the so-called Bildung, so that we try to, improve democracy and civic engagement, and hopefully then improve the culture and the political system through that. I don't know what you guys think about that. There's also, I was thinking about how to implement that with maybe some sort of a technology, some sort of app that would then be deployed to one of these social networks, one or more of the social networks that are being created. And that's kind of my idea. Does anybody have any thoughts about that? Yes, Bernhard.
Yes, you started off with implementing the 6 forms of politics. And I've kept myself encountering skepticism when I think of it that way, which is also a little bit what I was mentioning earlier when coming from the Dave Snowden criticism. Is I like the idea of the 6 forms of politics, and I definitely see the appeal of having it as a sort of compass, but having some sort of system that puts it first and then builds something out of it. It kind of, I can't quite put my finger on it why, but it feels to be in the wrong direction. I don't know. It means to go from top to bottom instead of the other way around, right? So this is where I'm a little bit reserved, but I would be very much open to learning how an experiment can be constructed, whether applying the 6 forms to something will be beneficial, right? How do you construct such a space where you run it as a small scale experiment to figure out where does it actually lead you, right?
Yeah, it's fair criticism, and the way that it is described in the Hansi Freinacht books is that you would establish new ministries, governmental ministries for this, and I'm taking a very loose interpretation, very much leveraging civil society, and also starting at the local level is basically what I'm thinking, is that these would start with an experiment as a pilot program. And for me, it'd be like Northern California, and we have pieces of the puzzle in place already, and they just need to have like a certain way of connecting between them, and seeing if that would collectively provide an improvement of the culture, there. And this is a model, not necessarily though. We're gonna need to adjust it a little bit. there might be more than 6 that we have to envision, more than the 6, or this idea that, you know, probably the way that it would end up having to work is that we create a map of these organizations that are on the ground somewhere, or that are virtual somehow. We would tag them based on what is their main area, how it aligns with one of these 6. So every organization that would be participating in this would be essentially categorized primarily through this, and then we would have a certain way in which the app would help people, members, move from one to another, so that they get those different areas of life that they can develop in those ways. They can develop better sense making, they can develop better inner awareness, they can develop better meaning making, etc., because they're participating in those groups. Now I will admit, yes, well, this seems quite abstract, and you are, you know, imposing some sort of grand framework onto this, you know, how are we going to do things? It's fair criticism, but I think it's worth trying, and that's what I'm trying to do. And does anybody else have any shares or needs or offers? And I suppose if not for now, we might just close the call. And I do thank you all for joining. I'm interested in working more with you guys, and including you know, with Johan. Maybe we can talk about the cognition model you were talking about there. We can,
yeah, absolutely. And
work
if anyone
on it.
else wants to do that, please contact me. And also thank you to everybody who sent me and said things.
Are you on the Discord, Johan?
Yes. And I think I am in the full name.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you guys, and we'll be in touch. So, all right. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everybody. Peace.
Bye-bye.
Love you all. Bye, Juan. Good to see you and hear you.
Bye.